All right, welcome back to the Nightly Sports Call. We're going to head out to the phone lines right now. You can tweet me, @Rich Walsh, or @Paul Zeise if you have any questions. Also, 412-575-2600 is the number. We have a couple lines open. Let's go out to Derek in Pittsburgh. How you doing, Derek?
Good. The hit by that player was fair. And he should be fined for $25 million. That hit was not good.
I appreciate the call, Derek, and you know, I don't know if the hit was fair, but we talked about this in the first segment that he should definitely have been fined. He was penalized. You know, he might win his appeal, like you said, it might get it reduced, but you know, they're trying to take these kind of hits out of the game, like Paul was saying. So that's why they're fining these guys an excessive amount of money. Doing this. They don't
want guys getting hurt. I mean, you know, it's all about safety. That's why it's why they started with the helmet-to-helmet fines, and they started, you know, a number of different reasons why they fine guys. You know, but all of it comes back to player safety, and I think that's what gets lost in these discussions. Yeah. The reason these rules exist is because they want to keep players safe.
You know, I don't want to change the subject here, but I really like the Thursday night uniforms. I like the all one color. We're trying to watch a game right over here and answer your phone calls. I know the Steelers have all black this year when they play on Thursday night. There was the one questionable game, I think it was last year, it was the Bills and the Jets when it was blue and the green or something. But I do like the Thursday night uniforms. All right. Yeah, right now this
the
game's
Raiders
pretty close.
Just don't look right in white. I don't care what anyone says. They should always be in black.
The Raiders just don't look right at all. I don't know why. I expected this team. You know, and that's one thing, if you tune into our news tonight after the game on KDKA, Ed Bouchette, your colleague, talks a little bit about, you know, the topsy-turvy NFL and any given Sunday. That statement can't be more true, you know, like the title of the movie. Anyone can win on Sundays, and the Steelers, you know, felt that 2 times this year. So who knows what's going on in the NFL right now. But it is fun to watch at times. All right, let's go back out to the phone lines. We're going to go out to Big Man in South Hills. How you doing, big man?
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call. Appreciate it very much.
No problem.
I want to be a little bit more direct and maybe more objective about Mike Mitchell. I believe there's, to Paul's point, you can't split hairs here. There's no degrees of being dirty. You're either a dirty player or you're not. I not only think he's a dirty player, but I also think he's an ignorant player. How many times has he been penalized in precarious moments of the game over the last 2 years for hitting players in the head? And you look at James Harrison. He's a gentleman who's able, a ball player is able to change his game after going high for many, many years. Now he's still a dominant player, even as senior as he is to the game, albeit he's been able to change his game. So I don't have a lot of positives about Mike Mitchell. I do think he is a dirty player, and he's not a smart player. He hurts the team, unfortunately, and I think he needs to change his game.
All right, big man.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate the call. Yeah, I mean,
I would agree with the second part. He's not a smart player, and I don't think
I
don't think he's a very good player most of the time either. I think he's been very overrated the last year and a half. You know, last season and so far this season, I don't think he's a good player. I don't think he's, you know, he's okay, but he's not very, you know, but he's definitely not a smart player. I just don't know that he's a guy that's out there truly headhunting.
No, I don't think so either. But, you know, some of these safeties, they like the big hits. You look at Ryan Clark. I mean, these guys want to hit guys. You know, you got a running back coming at you that's bigger than you. I mean, you're gonna try to take him down any way you can. And sometimes these guys just try to tee off on guys. And he's even used that word in interviews with me that he tries to tee off on guys. And you know, this is the kind of stuff that happens, and this is the penalties that are going to happen. And I think with Mitchell, he's an emotional player. I think some of the guys feed off of him. I mean, they feed off these big hits. But, you know, with the timing of them, that could hurt the Steelers, and it has in the past. That could affect games when you do these kind of things. I don't think he's a dirty player. I disagree with that. I don't think he's a dirty player. Maybe there are degrees of dirty hits. He's not a dirty player. He's not trying to end Alex Smith's career.
Right.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, in that hit, I don't think that's what he was trying to do. I really don't. But the result of the hit was it was dirty.
Yeah, it was after the fact. It was after he threw the ball.
Mean,
went low.
Pay the fine and move on.
All right, let's go out to Andrew and Butler. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for calling.
How do you think Ben Roethlisberger is going to do against the Bengals?
I think he's going to win. Hey, I appreciate the call. I think he's going to win. I think you're going to see a similar game plan as to what you saw in Kansas City. They're going to keep his yardage, his passing down, and they're going to give the ball to Le'Veon Bell as much as they can.
If they continue to do the things they did against Kansas City in terms of handing the ball to Le'Veon Bell, I think Ben Roethlisberger will be really good.
Yes.
If it gets to a point where he's got to chuck the ball over the field, it will be really bad.
It could end up with interceptions and end up like Jacksonville. But I think if Le'Veon Bell has a good game and Ben Roethlisberger passes for 250 yards, I think the Steelers win this game. I mean, I think if they keep it more run first, you know, even if you keep it 50-50 between run and pass, you got to give the ball to Antonio Brown, or he's going to be complaining next week. So you got to find ways to get all these guys the ball. I think they need to start utilizing the tight end more, and I guess Vance McDonald got to start catching balls, which he did. Still kind of like bobbled it a little bit, but you got to get a tight end that's reliable. I think this offense needs that. All right, back out to the phone lines. We're going to go out to David in Bell Vernon. How you doing, David?
Hey, but how you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Hey, listen, I'd like to get Paul's opinion on the baseball playoffs. If he thinks the Yankees are going to make it, or does he think it's basically they're going to lose as they go back on the road, and how they're going to make out against the Dodgers?
Well, Paul, I mean, yeah, you got the Yankees headed back to Houston.
Yeah, I said in mid-August that the Dodgers, this was theirs to lose. You know, that they were by far the best team. I don't see how they lose. I mean, they hit, especially. I mean, they're hitting the ball the way they're hitting it. Their bullpen is strong. They got the best closer in the game. They've got 3 really good starters, you know, and a 4th guy they could put in there if they needed to. I mean, I just think I think the Yankees will win one of the 2 in Houston, get to the World Series. But it won't shock me if the World Series is like this NLCS and, you know, the Dodgers win in like 5 games or something.
Hey, thanks for your call, David. You know, Gene and I were talking last night on the show about, you know, baseball needs a salary cap. And, I asked him, and I'm going to ask you this. Do you think we'll ever see a salary cap, salary floor? You know, that –
I don't think it needs a cap, though.
You don't?
I think
I think for fans it does.
If they had some revenue sharing, some better revenue sharing plans, they wouldn't need a cap. That's not, to me, you know.
The revenue sharing doesn't help fans. It doesn't help you put a good team on the field. You can keep all your money if you own the team.
Listen, if there's revenue sharing, then there should be maybe a salary floor.
Salary floor.
But not a salary cap. If a team's willing to spend $400 million.
I think there needs to be a salary cap. I mean, I think it needs to be like the NFL, NHL.
But again, you know, last year
you got the 2 highest payrolls, basically.
Right, but last year the Indians were.
You're right, but that happens when what? 1 out of how many years?
No. Last year the Indians were, you know, what? Basically 2 strikes or 3 strikes, 2 strikes away from winning the World Series. What, the year before that, who was the Cubs? No, it was the Cubs last year. The year before that, wasn't it the Royals?
Yeah, the Royals were in it.
Okay, and the year before that, the Royals were in it. And there was 3 years the Pirates were in the.
But you look at where these teams are now. I mean, it's a once every 5 years if you can grow your talent.
Again, I understand that, but Baltimore's a big market team, aren't they? They spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
They don't win.
They don't win.
You know what I'm saying?
Houston actually doesn't spend a lot of money, but they are a large market team.
But Houston, and you know the thing about the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Yankees especially, and even the Astros. You know what they've done? They've drafted well and developed well. Yeah, they can sign free agents, I understand that. But if the Pirates drafted and developed as well as those 3 teams, we wouldn't be talking about the Pirates being, you know, 75 wins or 73 wins or whatever they were, because they're younger guys, which is what the Astros did. Their younger guys would be their stars. Instead, they haven't drafted well. They haven't developed well. If you're a small market team, you got to do that. So do that first. Then whine about free agency and how much money teams are spending.
On that note, we got to take a break. Back with more calls and some tweets coming up next. Stay right there.